The focus of our business is to take a massive amount of highly granular data. We have viewing data on about 60 million Americans, and we have purchase data on about 8 million of them, and use that to deliver more targeted reach for advertisers. We have partnerships with 9 of the top 10 cable, satellite, and telco operators, meaning we can aggregate inventory from them, and 70 of the top 100 cable nets, meaning we have specific direct relationships with the national programmers. We package together campaigns and buys for advertisers that want to reach specific audiences. It could be, I'm looking for families that go out to a casual fine dining restaurant at least twice a month. And we'll work with all of those inventory partners to build essentially a synthetic network specifically designed for that casual fine dining restaurant. And we'll deliver that.
Deliver it to where, Dave? Explain that a little bit.
Sure. Well, what we do is, right now, if you want to find these highly concentrated audiences of casual fine diners across the 100 different cable networks and operators, an agency would have to have a massive database. They would have to have the capacity to aggregate spot by spot each of those spots, and then they would have to be able to sort of do that in a way that doesn't undermine or conflict with the relationship they already have with those networks, where they're buying full rate card priced spots for content-based buys. So enter Simulmedia. We work on behalf of all of those cable networks and all of those operators to package up these spots, which may be in the middle of the day, they may be in the morning, they could be in prime, most likely they're not, they could be in fringe, they could be overnight. And we'll package up thousands and thousands of them. They're in the parlance of online, they're sort of the torso and the longer tail of TV. And we'll then go to the agency as a vendor of media, as a seller of media, an ad network, not unlike the online type, where we'll sell this campaign to them. We'll guarantee that campaign against a certain concentration of audience. We'll post on it, something that's never really been done in the TV world. We'll actually traffic that campaign. We'll aggregate all of the post logs, deliver those up to the advertiser, and in many cases even be able to measure the actual concentration of purchasers that saw the spots.
So Dave, but how does it work in terms of, it's not addressable? Who are those groups, and how do you create that network? Are they people who are watching in certain times in certain cities? Yeah. How do you create that target?
For example, we know that on 10% of the spots on cable, of the normal spots, that the audience will index at 150 on a 100 basis, 50% more likely to be a big box retail shopper than not. Now, the standard measurements that are used in the industry today, the 50,000 person Nielsen sample, it cannot see at that level of granularity across those spots with an appropriate level of statistical certainty that you're most likely to have a super highly concentrated big box retail shopper on all of these spots that may have a 0.3 rating or a 0.4 rating. Very, very small for the TV world. Because we have the largest database ever leveraged, audience database of viewing behavior and purchase data, we can find them. So what I like to tell people is, we're not changing the spot at every single household. But what we are doing is we're finding the needles in the haystack of thousands and thousands of spots, and we're aggregating them by the ton and delivering them to the advertiser. We're solving a problem which has happened in television, the fragmentation problem, which has outstripped the capacity of the existing measurements to do it. So the agency planning tools, the core media measurement tools, the packaging strategies of the networks today don't have a capacity to effectively access about 2/3 of the TV viewing mass on TV today. It's on spots that are too small to be measured with that kind of level of accuracy.
Dave, tell us a little bit now about the agencies, how you're interacting with them. We're heading to the 4As. What is how do you work with their traditional TV buying group, and what is the offering? Tell us a little about the interaction with the agencies and the scope of your work.
So our job is to help agencies do better work for their clients, deliver a better product at a better price, and be smarter. One of the real challenges in agencies today are they don't have a lot of funding for a lot of heavy capital investments like we're making. So we can bring a lot of data to the table that the agencies don't otherwise have. Number two, most of them don't have a capacity to build these synthetic networks across hundreds of different networks and all of these different operators. In most cases, a national cable buy, probably in the average cable buy, is only going to go about 15 or 18 cable nets deep. And we'll go 100 nets deep. So when we talk to agencies, sometimes we make them a little uncomfortable. It's not exactly our intention, but I guess that's inevitable when you're bringing in something new. So sometimes they get a little uncomfortable because they're afraid that we're trying to disintermediate them. And we're not. We're actually just trying to sell a better media product, and we're trying to deliver something that on an audience basis can complement their core content buys. Because when we talk to the agency, we'll be like, look, what's the foundation of your media plan for your client? And they'll always say it's content. It's content. It's these shows, it's this kind of sports. And then we'll talk about what's your biggest challenge, and they'll tell us declining reach, increasing waste. And we don't have very good insights. And those are the three things that we're focused on solving, which is giving them more reach against their target audience, stitching together audiences on spots they wouldn't know where to find these concentrations, delivering it in a way that's much more efficient than they do it today, but also providing them insights that we can give them from having granular data on 60 million people so that they can help evolve the media program for their client.
And finally, Dave, how would you quantify the scope of your work with advertisers in terms of the numbers of campaigns or impressions, or how do you measure that, or what can you share?
So there's a few ways. One, we can talk about the amount of we've done. I mean, at this point, I don't know how many hundreds of campaigns we've been involved with, but it's certainly more than 500. And probably significantly more than that. Probably the most important metrics to think about the Simulmedia Audience Network and our scale are we see data on about 20% of all TV viewers. So let's say it's about 60 million people. We have activated that against 3/4 of all inventory on television, which means we have the capacity in any week to reach every single one of the TV viewing Americans. And one of the ways I like to think of that on a relative scale basis is that we can deliver in one campaign, just a single campaign in a day on TV with normal linear 30-second spots, more targeted reach than YouTube can deliver all day. And I have enormous respect for YouTube. It's obviously coming fast, but sometimes, and particularly as someone who came out of the online world, we have this idea that online has gotten so big relative to where it came from, we really forget that there's still a much older sibling in the house who's a lot stronger and a lot bigger and a lot faster and can still do really good things for advertisers.